welcome to another episode of Livelunch with my esteemed guest, Tim Jones.
Mr. Jones.
Mr.
Yes.
Jones, probably one of the last few times we can call you Mr. Jones.
I really hope so, but we shall see.
And Tim's in the process of doing his doctorate. And soon he'll be Dr. Jones.
Yeah, God willing, yes. Yeah.
Do you remember that terrible band that did Barbie doll, and then there was a
What do
Dr.
you mean the terrible band?
Jones.
You're talking about Aqua?
Yes, Aqua.
Yes, I had to think for a minute there because you said terrible band, and obviously they play a lot in my household.
Yeah,
and it's not entirely because of my daughters. So. An affinity with Aqua.
We got lunch from Lost Boys. We got chicken wings.
Lovely.
Which is great.
How hot are they?
Well, I haven't gone for like the hot
Okay.
option.
That's good to be
relatively
forewarned.
peaceful option. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
But it's good to have you guys, man.
Thank you.
I'm
No,
looking
it's
forward to this
nice to
episode.
be
I
here.
feel like we can get we'll learn a lot of good things because Tim's with us.
Well, we'll certainly talk. Yeah,
We will certainly talk.
Let's see what happens.
Last Sunday, we had the next talk on our Your People series called Your Parents, about how we relate to our parents, from Ephesians chapter 6 verses 1 to 3.
It's good stuff in both chapters.
It is such a good
They
book.
both come really highly recommended. Yeah.
Jill spoke to us on having what our attitude towards our parents should be, and drew parallels with Jesus' relationship with his earthly parents and how he submitted to their authority, and what that looked like, and stuff that we could learn. So looking forward to unpacking that with Tim. We are still in the middle of our small group term, so we've got some questions for you to discuss in your small groups, and they are: the first question, why do you think that honouring parents is such a rare and even counterculture message in our society? We'll unpack that a little bit after reading of these questions. What has been your experience with your parents? In what way has honouring them been a challenge, and how have you navigated that? And what does it look like for you to live under your Heavenly Father this week? How will that affect you? How will that affect what you do, say, or think? So let's look at the first one. Why do you think that a talk on honouring parents is such a rare and even counterculture message in our society? Tell me, Tim.
Why do I think?
Why do you think that?
I think it's a breath of fresh air. Actually, I think that there's.
Take your time to answer.
Yeah, I can see that you're going to go to work on the wing, so we'll make this a nice long comment.
Thank you.
I think it's a breath of fresh air because really we're built for this. We're built to give and receive honour. There's supposed to be this interplay and relationship that goes on. We've got a Lord who is over all spheres of life, including the family, and he's been given the authority by the Father, as the Scripture says, that he's been given authority over all things. And so actually in Ephesians, the way that it quotes from the fifth commandment about honouring your father and mother, that your life may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, so there's a promise attached to it as an incentive. It adds an extra bit, or Paul adds an extra bit.
Sorry,
in
just
Ephesians. Yeah.
Because the verse did say that, so that didn't go well with you.
Yeah.
How do you respond to people who clearly haven't
say it didn't go well with you in the land that the Lord was giving you?
Yeah, twofold. Either people have honoured their parents and it hasn't gone well, or they haven't honoured their parents and it has gone well.
Yeah,
there are plenty of examples of that.
Well, I think that it's basically saying that this isn't an absolute proof, but it's something that gives the it's a corroborating evidence that goes along with it, that actually there's a righteousness, there's a rightness, not just righteousness as in you're doing the right thing, but literally it is right. It goes with the grain of how we're created, to show this deference, to show this honour to your parents. And when you don't, and you still achieve, and things still go well for you, there's going to be a hollowness to it, because you're pursuing it in broken shalom, as the Bible would have it. That shalom is vertical relationship with God being intact, and horizontal relationship with your other human peers. Between that, you might have parents, actually, because you're not calling parents peers, you're deferring to them. You're saying they're a superior and you're an inferior. Very unpopular thing to be saying, but actually needs saying, desperately needs saying, because it's how people are made. It speaks to something fundamental about the human that's being missed when you start saying, well, let's just have a flat organizational chart and have no deference, have an egalitarian principle of life in every sphere, child-led learning even, I'm not saying that that's always and necessarily a bad thing, but when you're putting the weight of a child's education upon the child and saying, well, where do you want to go next all the time, you're putting a huge burden. And I want to talk about this word burden actually, because that's the word. So the word behind honor in the fifth commandment, where it starts and it doesn't say obey, it says honor your mother and father, that it might go well with you in the land the Lord your God's giving you, that your days may be long. So it's your mother, your father, your days. These things are connected. The honor is the same word that you have used in Exodus, where it talks about Pharaoh putting a burden on the people, making it harder for them to work. He says, let's increase their burden. It's the same word. Does he want to increase honor? No, it's the weight that's being put on them. So the ideas of weight, glory, as well, glory is a similar related word, honor and burden, they all kind of go together. When you think about that, you realise, there's a principle at work here of who carries the weight, who carries the burden. And you could say whose opinion carries weight. So it's clearly when it says honour your parents, it's saying give weight to what they're saying. But it's a principle, isn't it? Because you give weight to what your parents are saying in different ways in different phases of life. So when you're 5, you'll give weight to your parents' view almost in a godlike way, that you're seeing them as the authority. I know there's different circumstances, but I'm just talking in generalities. You'll see them as this. They're carrying the weight, so you listen because they are carrying the weight. They're taking responsibility. When you get older and actually start, maybe like you and I, start having your own family, you still give weight to what your parents say. If they intervene at some point and say, "Hey, I've watched this and I want to give you an opinion," you're still going to give weight to it, but you're not giving weight to it as you did when you're 5. And hear me right, you're not giving less weight to it, you're giving adult weight to it rather than child weight to what's being said. So you're still honouring your parent.
So then would you say that by that principle, there's a negative burden on you that you carry to honour your parents? So I guess in the instance where, if you ask our kids, if you ask my kids, a lot of the order that they give me can be quite a difficult burden because I'm not giving them sweets first thing in the morning, and I'm restricting them.
So that's a heavy burden to bear, isn't it?
And I guess what does that look like when you're older? Do you, when parents, sometimes, and it could be a different cultural thing, is that there's a weight that comes with your parents' views, advice, or whatever they put on, and then I guess it could have various edges of that spectrum. Some of it could be quite manipulative and subtle, and some of it can be quite overbearing.
Let me just do. I want to finish the thought that I started explaining what was different about the Ephesians 6 quotation of the fifth commandment, and the difference is that Paul gives further exposition, and he says that obey your parents as is right in the Lord, and he means Jesus Christ. He's not talking in a general sense of God. An undefined sense. He's saying that the reason for this authority being enacted is because all authority has been given to Jesus, and now it's right in the Lord. It's the right thing being played out. It's shalom restored, if you like, for you to be playing this out in your family settings. He's giving that as the reason. So that's additional to the reason of the generic outflowing of a good life, a long life in the land that the Lord's giving to you. He's also saying, and now we've got more light on this. We've got more light on the subject because He's Lord of all. You live in your families, recognizing His lordship over all of you, and thus you give weight and deference to your parents. Now, on your second question about or my second point rather, about how you give honour and weight at different ages and how it's received as a child. I just want to relay a little anecdote of there was a man in our church who has since gone off and planted a church for himself. And I remember being at a prayer day up at Ashburnham. It was just, and on these days you're often queuing up for food and just sort of chewing the fat and talking. And I just
quite literally,
chewing the fat on a bad day. This stuff looks all right though. But I just my wife had just had our first daughter, our eldest, about like literally the week before or something. And we were in the queue, and he's just saying, "Oh, Tim, how are you? And what's going on in life?" I was like, "Wow, we've just had our first child, and it's amazing." So it's like 10 years ago, and I just said the throwaway line, "Got any advice for me?" You know, and I didn't really expect anything to come back. And we went from this jovial atmosphere, just went ashen-faced straight away. Like not as in he was angry or anything, but it just went serious. And he said, "Yes, I have got some advice for you. Yes, I want you to know something." Okay. And he said, "Be really clear and really strict when she's young, and you can ease it off as you go in further in life. And you can't do it the other way around." He said, and this was his sincere advice. Now, I know both of his children, and they're wonderful. They're in their 20s now. They're grown up, and
I don't know who this is, but
yeah, I know you're probably racking your brain, but I'll tell you offline. but the fruit of it is borne out. You know, you've seen the righteousness that I was speaking about earlier, the rightness of this way of crafting and building a household played out. And now I'm in a phase of life where my daughter's 10, and I'm telling her this same stuff. She's saying to me, when can I go out on my own? When can I be trusted with this, that, and the other? Good questions. So for me, this is where it starts changing. It's where actually you start. She doesn't stop honouring me. She's still giving weight to what I'm saying, but she wants to know why. Why are the lines in these places in this season? And I'll say, because I've started you on a small track, and I'm caring for you. I've been given the authority by Jesus, by the Father through Jesus. You know, they've got to observe this. This has happened this way, and I care about you in each phase of your life. And the dynamic between us is two-way. It's not just you obey me. It's you give weight to what I'm saying, and I hear you, and we work and we move in that same dynamic. So now it looks like she's giving weight to what I'm saying because she's coming to me with questions.
Yeah.
She wasn't doing that when she was 5. She wasn't doing it when she was, even 8. It changes almost year on year, but the principle remains.
I think I would love to go a bit deeper into that, but before that, going back to the original question about this being such a countercultural message, do you agree or do you disagree? And if you...
I agree and I love it. I'm glad that there's... I hope people will push back on it. I hope that actually, it just shows people are listening, that Joel's point at the outset of his sermon was that we are being given opinions about authority all the time. You could say there are generic ones that say, you need to be your own authority. Now, based on what I've constructed so far, what does that mean? It means that you need to carry your own burden. That might feel positive in certain moments, but as I said, with the child-led education, if that is purely what you do, you say everything is on you, then you're saying you're on your own in the world. That there's no one in charge, there's no one at the wheel, and that's a very nihilistic and negative story, and it's not true. Apart from anything, I think so. If that's the meta story that you're operating with, it must be a huge breath of fresh air to have it challenged by someone who's saying no. In fact, there is someone who's in charge. There's someone who is benevolent and in charge, which is very important. He's kind. Even as King David says, it's your kindness that made me great, and he's praising the Lord. So we have dynamics and contours of who this authority is. So yes, I do think it's countercultural, and yes, I do think it's necessary. Yes, I do think it's true. And I think that any idea that you're positing like this needs to be defended and argued for. So I hope some people are perturbed by it and say, no, that you're wrong, prove it. Give me something else. I hope that's where it goes in small group. It would be great if actually people actually interact with it. I think there's fruit there.
I guess moving on to some more practical outworkings of what we heard on Sunday is, what does honouring parents look like as an adult?
That's brilliant. Yes, I mean I'd like to hear from you a bit on this. if truth be told, I think that you had the benefit of growing up in a different culture and a different country, and perhaps, I'm assuming, but experienced different parenting styles that may have impacted on you as a person. and maybe impacted on the way that you parent now. So could you speak to that? How and specifically through the lens of that question that you gave, how has it changed since you were a teenager and now a young adult, now a parent? Yes.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this earlier with a friend this morning about, because I didn't grow up. Well, I didn't grow up in this country, but my parents don't live in this country, so they live in India, and through osmosis and being in this land that the Lord has called me to, I've learned. My approach to lots of things has changed. So even like a really small example, and this is not a big philosophical moment, but if I said to you, last week I shopped in Asda, but this week I'm shopping in Waitrose, you would get everything what I was trying to communicate. But
I would congratulate you. So, have you come into money, sir?
Yeah. And I think it's a small statement, but it would, none of my people back home would be able to connect with what I was saying. Right. And so I was feeling quite provoked by what Joel said, because the principle of honouring your parents should be beyond cross-cultural differences, and yes, it brings in added levels of complication, but the principle is honouring your parents for to go well with you. Personally, I felt like there's a lot of things that I don't talk to my parents about, or I don't say, because I'll have to explain.
Right.
I'll have to
translate it.
Yeah, translate it.
Yeah.
Well, not literature, but you
translate an idea.
Yeah. And when your relationship is mostly over the telephone and you're not with them, it's trickier to explain lots of life decisions. So even like when in India, when a woman gives birth, lots of the family are involved or around, and they have to get to the hospital, and there's a lot of involvement. So in some ways, you would expect the mother of the woman giving birth to be in the hospital room as compared to the husband. Like that level, that's just how it's done. So they couldn't get their heads around where it was just me and Amy going to the hospital for when my first child was being born. Or even you go in when your contractions are at a certain duration and that sort of thing. But in India, you go in a lot sooner. So the first contraction, bang, you're in, get into the hospital.
Sounds like
and
a good system.
That's half the process. And I remember them being quite anxious when we weren't going to the hospital as soon as the first contraction started. And I'm like, I don't need, it's really complicated for me to try and, exactly, to explain all of this to you. Anyway, all this to say is, I did feel quite challenged about, by me not communicating sufficiently with them. I don't feel like I'm honouring them or letting them feel a part of my life, and I'm their son, and they care about me, and they want to know what's going on, and they want to be as involved. And it might mean it means longer conversations. It means a lot more explanation.
Absolutely.
And I did message my mum and say, "Mum, I love you, and we should chat." And I found that just really helpful. I mean, of course, there's cross-cultural things bring in lots of complications, and every person that you speak to will bring in different nuance in the relationship that they have with their parents. But this is just.
I think you just point to something really important, that actually it's a dynamic and it's a dance rather than a set of rules.
Absolutely.
So when you say, I contact with my mother and I wanted to say to her, I love you, like I just need to communicate that. That's going to be the right thing and contextualize. I mean, it's always the right thing for sure, but it's just one of those things where it's actually there's a gap here that needs to be filled in terms of honour. In terms of showing, I give weight to what you say. I take you seriously. I think you can separate the kind of natural feeling based love that one has in a family and what's being spoken of here. And I think that just bear with me for a minute, because I think it's important to differentiate these, because you could have a dog with a litter of puppies, and there's going to be a love there in terms of a relationship that is feeling based, that is natural, that's biotic. And what we're talking about is actually something that goes, it's to do with the will. It's to will and love, what you want and what you desire and what you love. These are a group of ideas that are attached to each other, and the same thing basically. It's different from feeling. Okay, so it's different from just like the kind of need love or something. Yeah, where you're just they're dependent because biotically you're dependent. This is and it's hard for people to parse out because you start off like that anyway. So you're feeding from your mother. You are biotically involved, but there's a diversity or a divergence that comes as the will and the child asserts what it loves and what it wants. Then you are choosing to give honor. Actually, you're choosing where you give honor and where you give respect, and it changes throughout a child's life as well as you become. Go outside of the family and you start finding your friends and you start giving honor and you start giving respect to those. Yeah.
Would we say that honor changes from obedience to affection as you grow older?
I think that's my experience. I think that is a normative experience. That and again we're talking in terms of we haven't even touched upon damaged family.
Yeah, I think let's look at that.
Actually, that's probably where we should go fairly swiftly. But I'd say as a quick answer to your question that I think that we work with that same dynamic all the time. That we're to give honor, and as my friend who was advising me says, start with obedience. Instill it because it's not just for you out of a paranoia or won't she obey me? I can't fix it later. That's not what I mean, and that's not what he meant. He's there saying this is the right outworking of honor for this season. That it coheres with the Proverbs: train a child in the way they should go, and when they're older they won't depart from it. And people then say, well, why did he depart from it? I trained the child in the way he should go and he departed from it. It's not a promise. It's the wisdom of God. It's talking about how you wisely walk out a life. And you do your side of it in terms of providing someone they can respect. Providing someone who is not temperamental or just variable. So when they come to you, they're coming to something that they can be sure of, even if they don't always like the authority coming in. They know that Dad's actually going to be there for them, and not at their whim. Yeah. And I think that kind of stays the same. Yeah. But I'm not going to insist on obedience from my 20-year-old, 30-year-old daughter. I'm going to be there saying, we still have this respect and rapport. Yeah.
It's so fascinating because even it's helped me understand my relationship with my parents better. Is you always think that the older your kids get, the less, I guess, responsible you are for them, and so the less you begin to care for them, or the less hurt that they can bring you.
It's one of my least favourite pieces of advice or pieces of anecdotal evidence that people give to me, and people do this often, like grandparent aged people. They say you never stop worrying about your kids.
But and
I haven't so far, but I was kind of hoping that I would at some point. But yeah, so that my children, my eldest is 10 years old, and I'm like, oh right, so I'm going to carry them in my heart. So as much as
but so just to add to that, I think if anything, it begins to get a lot trickier. Well, the weight of the worry increases because the decisions you make, the older you get, have a far bigger impact on your life.
They do. I think the nature of the worries change. So you're not.
I think the intensity of the worry changes.
In some areas, but think about how you worry about your. So another example about my poor daughter, who I keep speaking about today. But I can remember I was working full time in the church at the time, and I was having to drop her off at nursery. She was very little. She was just like 8 months old or something.
8 months old?
It's very, very little. Like, so they had a baby. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And every time I was just like, oh, I don't feel great about this. I feel... not that I put her in danger, and I think it's good, and like the whole situation is good, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, there's something as the dad here, where I'm like, my worry for her, and I don't worry about her like that now. Yeah, see, sure. Yeah. So I think it, you can play one season off against another. Each one has its own set of worries. But I think the news to me is you don't stop worrying about your children.
Well, I think to spin this positively is now.
It is positive to me.
Like
I say
whilst life is going fairly peaceful for me, and my marriage is stable, and my kids are great, and my home is we're earning a decent salary and all of this.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is to keep reassuring my parents, not that they're constantly asking for it, that we're okay, and enjoy a season.
That's a great example of honouring your parents in this season. Is actually you're bearing in mind how are they carrying their burden of authority in this season. And it will be out of concern. They want to hear from you.
Well,
so that's
that's what
you're a considerate man.
Yeah, it really helped me. Because I don't know what tomorrow has in store. I don't know if a life-changing illness or something befalls our family, or in this moment where everything seems to be okay, to just keep we're doing well. God's in control of our lives. We are in church and we're in Jesus and in great community. And I think that they would just feel our prayers are being answered, because there were years ago when it was completely the opposite. I think we're running out of time, so let's just quickly get to this.
Please.
If my parents have been abusive and the relationship has broken down, does God want me to reconcile with them? But I guess the deeper question: how do we honor parents when the relationship is broken down?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a great specific example as well, and. I think let's stay on the same track. Let's say if it's honour, how do you honour a parent who has dishonoured themselves? And that's hard. It's when you're saying in the same way, how do you build respect back in a relationship? I think the first thing to say is that you can't be false about it. You can't just say, here's all the trust. And you certainly shouldn't do that saying, in a sense that you think that you're following the scripture by doing that. It's very dangerous. If you say, no, I've made a decision of the will. I'm going to obey my parents, for example. It's like honour is going to look this specific way that doesn't match up with the evidence, doesn't match up with the relationship. I think, to speak to the actual question, it's got to be a process of rebuilding with that aim of getting to a place of being able to honour again. And sadly, sometimes things are so broken that you're not going to be able to get there.
And there could be instances where the parent doesn't want to reconcile.
Absolutely, or dangerous situations, criminal situations. All of this needs to be borne in mind, and you need to think about it sanely. You can't think that you're following the scripture faithfully just by being ignorant of the evidence as it comes to you. The principle and the norm and the thing that the not like gold standard, but it's the thing that is right being held up. Sometimes you can't even go for that. You can't get there because of the estrangement, because of evil, because of sin in the world, because of sin in the family. Yeah, very sad. But I would say as well, I've been amazed over the course of years at the reconciliations that I have seen of people who I thought that'll never come good, and actually by the grace of God, He's able to do more than we ask or imagine in this area too. But working towards being able to honour. Yeah,
and I think if Matt Carville was here, Matt, we miss you. He would say, come and talk to people.
Absolutely.
Find an appropriate person in church who you could talk to, and don't carry these burdens all by yourself. Some principles are all abiding, but then there's the outworking which can be specific to your story or specific to what the narrative is.
I think,
and so please, if not speak to Matt Carves is just a lovely guy to speak
Amen. Yes, I think absolutely spot on, and I think realizing the call to be parents as well, that in the church family, that there's actually natural family might have gone one way, redeemed family and family in the church can go quite another, that actually you are to be a father and mother in the church to those younger than you, and you're to respect the older ones as fathers and mothers in the Lord, that you can see the restored dynamic play out in lots of different spheres outside the nuclear family, and I think that's important to underscore as well.
Brilliant. Tim, we've run out of time, but thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you,
for having me back. Maybe before you become a doctor, or after you become a doctor.
See how we go.
We can enjoy finishing our wings. Thanks so much for staying with us. And this Sunday we have Your Crush.
Yes.
Which should be fun. Matt Carville is speaking to us about Your Crush.
Look forward to hearing from him about his crush. Yes. Good.
Yeah, we're going to have some inappropriate conversations and humour with him next Tuesday when we are back with Live Lunch. Thanks so much. See you later.
Bye.